everyone. Welcome to episode 96 of the Unleash and Thrive podcast. Today, I want to bring you an episode called Five Lies the Enemy Tells You About Your Value. Oh, trust me, I've been there. I want a t shirt, and I'm bringing this to you today because he does it to a lot of us. He will tell us lies about our value. And once somebody tells you lies about your value, guess what? It makes you discount your value. Somebody put that down. It makes you discount your value. I love this verse from Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14, that says that, you and I are wonderfully and fearfully made. I love it. Another version will say that, God took his time. He knit us in our mother's womb. He took his time to knit you and I. If something is not of value, who would take the time to put it together if it's not of value? The word of God tells us that when God made everything that he made, he looked at it and he said, this is good. So, dear woman, as you listen, I want you to tell yourself, this is good. But it's interesting that, growing up, often from the time that you grow up from a child, from being a baby, a toddler, all the way to adulthood, we go through so many phases and we go through so many teachers and we go through so many authorities and we go through a lot of people come into our lives. And sometimes they speak words that are contrary to what God says about us. But I am so grateful that guess what? God alone has the final say concerning you and I's life. I am so grateful that God alone determines my worth. I am so grateful that God alone determines what my value is. And you grateful? I am so grateful. I am grateful because when I look at myself, I know it doesn't matter what anybody else says. I remember growing up and I would hear parents say to their children, you would never amount to anything. You will never do good in life. Your life will never come to something good. They will just rain these curses over their life, not realizing that as a child grows up, that child holds on to that. And that child begins to meditate upon that what I was speaking about his life. And sometimes even when he or she is trying to do good, and he remembers that his mother or her mother said to her, you would never do good. She tells herself, I can't do good. My mommy already said I can't do good. Can you imagine? But guess what? It's time to change the narrative because what the word of God says must be final authority in our lives. And so if God says to you and I, you are valuable, guess what, sister? You are valuable because the word of God says it. He says everything he made was good. I love this quote that I often hear about that says, God doesn't make junk. And I so believe it. I believe God doesn't make junk. God does not make junk. God doesn't make what is not valuable. So everything God has made is something of value. God puts you together. He took his time, knit you and put you together. Guess what? You are valuable. The Bible even goes further, like I love to share, and calls you his masterpiece. The Bible calls you his masterpiece. Another version will say you are God's chosen treasure. Oh, you are. So it's something that is chosen. Can you call it something that is not valuable? No, 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 no. So my first reminder, one of the first lies that the enemy will tell us is that you are not valuable. The enemy will often tell people you are not valuable. And sometimes people come into relationships whereby the guy says to them, you won't amount to anything. You're not useful. You're not useful to anybody. You are just useless. Nobody will want you. And they'll keep on, and the more the guy says it, the more they believe those lies. But today I want to say to us, it's time to change the narrative. It's time to remind ourselves of who God says we are. Because really, who God says you and I are is what really is who really we are. It's not what anybody else says. You might go through school, a teacher might tell you, oh, you never, like my teacher told me when I was in, I think it was JS3, which is almost like grade 7, I think. My teacher told me, oh, you would never know maths. You're not good at it. You never know it. Can you imagine? How can somebody determine what I would know and what I wouldn't know? And so people have a right of their opinion to say over you, but you also have a right to refuse it if it's a lie over your life and say, no, no, no. I believe what the word of God says about me. And that's why you and I must know what the word of God says about us. The word of God says you are the apple of God's eyes. The word of God says that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The word of God says I am fearfully and wonderfully made. The word of God says I am God's chosen treasure. The word of God says I am let me wake you up. The word of God says that I am God's masterpiece. He says, I am God's handiwork. So how can a handiwork not be valuable? So my first thing I want to tell you today is that if you've heard that narrative, you are not valuable. It's time to change that narrative regarding yourself. Sometimes you have even told yourself that, you know what, maybe there's nothing much about me. Maybe I don't have much within me. I tell you, it's a lie that the enemy has brought. And you have to say, no, I am a person of value. I am full of value. God made me. He made me good. I have everything that he has made me to be, and I can be everything he has called me to be. That takes me to line number 2 that the enemy tells people is that, you are just full of no value. You are not a bundle of value. You are not, there is nothing within you that is valuable. Nothing within you valuable. So first of all, he might say to you, you are not valuable. And then he will say to you, you are empty. There is no value within you. Nothing. There is no value within you. You must say to him, no, no, no. I am a bundle of value. Because guess what? When God created you and I, he put gifts on the inside of us. He put talents on the inside of us. He put, he put creativity on the inside of us. He put so much on the inside of us. He made us. I always say that the gifts that God gave us are tools that he put in us because he knew the purpose for which he was calling us to. So according to the purpose that God called you to, that is the gift that he put on the inside of you. So never let anyone tell you, and sometimes people come in in shapes and forms and sizes and tell you there's nothing about you that is special. There's nothing about you. You have to say, excuse me. Take that word back. That's not for me. No, 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 no. I am a bundle of value. I have gifts on the inside of me. I have talent on the inside of me. I have so much on the inside of me. I have so much on the inside of me because first of all, it's a mindset, and that is why the Word of God reminds us of why we need to renew our minds. We must renew our minds to what the Word of God says. No matter where you're coming from, you might be coming from a past whereby somebody has spoken, wrong things into your life. It's your responsibility to take charge and say, you know what? I decide I am a bundle of value. And I always tell people that you can stand in the mirror and tell yourself, look at me, I am a bundle of value. I am wonderfully and fearfully made. I have so much within me. I have so much within me. And that takes me to number 3. And this one, I have heard a lot of people say it. I am not worth much. So sometimes the enemy will bring that lie to you. He might tell you, yes, you're not valuable. He might tell you there's nothing to you that really makes sense. But then he might go ahead and tell you you're not worth much, which means what he's saying to you is that even if you're a product and we take you to the market or to the store, nobody's going to command, you're not going to command much. You're not worth much. You must turn it around and say, hello, I am worth much. I am worth much. The word of God says that Jesus died for you and I on the cross of Calvary. Would Jesus die for something that is not worth much? And so you and I must renew our minds to the fact that we are worth much. You were worth it for Jesus to die for. You were worth it. He looked at you and he said, wow, look at my child. Oh, look, I must die for this child because this child is worth much. Your life is worth much. And I want to say this to somebody that might be going through one channel right now. Your life is worth much. Your life is worth much. You must stay on the earth because your life is worth much. Your life is worth much. You have value within you to give others. Others are looking for the value that you carry. That takes me to number 4. And number 4 is that where the enemy tells you, the world doesn't need what you have. Let me pause there for a minute and say that again. When the enemy tells you the world does not need what you have. So I mentioned how, Jesus died for you because you are worth much. But then when God created you, he put so much on the inside of you. And I want to use the example of the woman, there was a woman in 2 Kings chapter 4 this woman, her husband had been a prophet. He had died and he was in debt. He left his wife in debt. He left his children in debt. I was sharing about it the other day on one of the other episodes. And guess what? Here was the creditor was, coming here wanting to take her children from her. And she cried out to the prophet and said, you know what, my husband, he was a man of God, but now he left us with debt and they want to take my children. And the prophet asked her just one question: what do you have in your house? And she looked, I'm sure she thought long and fast. She's like, nothing much, I don't have except this jar of oil. Except this jar of oil. And the prophet knew that was all that was needed, except. So I'm asking someone that question now: what do you have? And you might be telling me nothing much, because the enemy has told you that the world doesn't need what you have. But what that woman did not know was that what she had, that jar of oil, was enough to bring her into the place of abundance. What she had, and she discounted, because people had told her that maybe that jar of oil was just sitting there. It was not worth much. She saw it as nothing much, but the prophet saw it as, this is the key to this woman's breakthrough. This is the key to this woman's abundance. So what is it that you have in your life? What is it that you have in your, you have as a person? What is it that you have in your mind? What is it that you have? And God has been pointing in that direction, that you're like, there's nothing more to it. What are the gifts that you have? What are the skills that you have? What is the ability that you have? What are the things you know how to do? What are the things that you know how to do effortlessly? What are those things that you can do, and you know that there is so much in your hands if you would just use those things? But here you are believing that lie of the enemy, that guess what? The world doesn't need what I have. I want to remind you today, the world needs the value that you have. The value that you carry, the value that you have, the world needs it. Because sometimes what you are keeping the saying is not worth much. It's what somebody somewhere is looking for. Why am I saying that? If you go back to that story in 2 Kings chapter 4, that woman, there was only one instruction that was given to her. And it was, there's nothing but the oil. And the prophet said to her, go and borrow vessels and begin to pour into the vessels. And so after she had poured into the vessels, guess what the next instruction was? The next instruction was, you poured into the vessels, okay, go and sell the oil. And after you sell the oil, you and your child, will pay off your debts, and you and your child live on the rest. And we never heard any story after that of the woman ever going into debt again. So the source of her liberation was in what she had, which she did not value. So it's a different thing for the enemy to tell you that the world doesn't need what you have. Is another thing for you to now tell yourself, nobody needs what I have. And so I want us to change the narrative around. Even if people have told you, and I always say, even if people have told you, I don't really need what you have, one no doesn't mean 10 no's. One no doesn't mean the end of the story. If one door closes, go to the next door and knock. If another door closes, go to the next one and knock. If another door closes, go to the next one and knock. Guess what? There will be a yes, because somebody needs what you have to offer. The value that God has put on the inside of you is not to be wasted. The value that God has put on the inside of you is not, He didn't put it there just for you to have it to yourself. It was because that value is meant to be given to your world. It's because the world needs the value that you carry within you. The world needs it, and that's why God has put it within you. But until you come to the realization that the world needs what I carry within me, the world needs the value that I am, until you begin to believe, what God says, and say, what, I am valuable, I am worth much, I am a bundle of value. You begin to remind yourself of that. And remind yourself, you might never know that the world needs what you carry. And that takes me to number 5, which is, the world does not just need your value, but the world is waiting for you to refine and deliver your value. Oh, I don't know if somebody heard me. The world doesn't just need what you have. Often, what we have may be in raw form, like that woman. She had the oil, but the oil had to go into jars. The oil had to go into jars before they could be sold for people to buy. And so what is it that you have that might just need to be refined and delivered to your world? I want to just challenge somebody today. What are those gifts that might just need to be refined, and delivered. And your word is saying, we're waiting for you. Like people that are knowing that one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:19 from the TPT version. The entire universe is standing on tiptoe. They're energy, they're yearning, they're groaning to see the manifestation of the sons and daughters of God. Often people are saying, I don't have what it takes. But somebody somewhere is saying, all I need is what you have. Did somebody hear me? Someone, you are saying, I don't have what it takes. I don't really know if I'm ready. But somebody saying, I'm just waiting for you to bring what you have. All I need is what you have. So I'm reminding you today, I'm challenging you today to look inwards and say, you know what? Begin to change that narrative in your mind. Begin to remind yourself, I am a person of value. To turn those lies around. I am a person of value. I am a bundle of value. I am worth much. The world needs what I carry, and the world is waiting for me to refine and deliver my value. So, my question to you is, what are you waiting for? What are those things that you have to do to refine your value? What are the things that you have to do to refine that value so that you can bring it forth to the world, so that you can begin to deliver what you have within you? Don't just sit on what you have, but look inward and begin to say, what are the things that I need to do? What are the gifts that I have? And I always say, I always write down 10 strengths about you. That's one great way to start. Write down 10 strengths about you. What are the 10 strengths about you? That things that you can deliver to your world. 10 things that you do also, write a list of 10 things that you do awesomely. Let me use that word. I don't think it's a word, but it's my word, awesomely, because awesome is just a word that I love. And then now begin to narrow it down. What are the things that I am so, I can dominate my world with this. Now find out two, and then now pick number one. What is one I'm going to focus on part-time? I will focus on this one. As I get better at this one, I will go to the next one. As I get better at this one, I will go to the next one. As I get better at this one, I will go to the next one. I want to hear your story. I want to hear your testimony. I want to hear you change that narrative from what the enemy has told you to what God has spoken concerning you. And the way we can change that narrative is by not just, by changing it in our mindset, but then going ahead and beginning to take action on that which we have heard today. I'll see you in the next episode. Have an awesome week ahead.